talk about ideating and selecting solutions. Of course, it's not problem solving unless you come up with a solution. And of course, implement a solution. That's an important part as well. Now, I like the word ideate versus the more commonly used brainstorm. There's a couple reasons for this. One, brainstorm is more about what you go through, whereas ideate is more about what you're doing, the purpose behind the whole thing, create ideas. Also, brainstorm has a sense of urgency to it that I don't think is necessary. I think can be harmful to the process. Sometimes we need time. We need to allow ideas to germinate, to grow, to prosper in some space. And so rushing to generate the ideas, I think, can be counterproductive. Now, one critical aspect to effective ideation is volume. We want more ideas. We want as many ideas as possible, even if we know they won't work. There's a couple reasons for this. One is that whether you end up with 10 ideas or 100 ideas, most often as we go through the ideation process, the first third of those ideas are the obvious ideas, the ones that we probably didn't need a lot of a process to generate, but also might not excite us, might not really get us where we want to go. The next third are the impossible ideas, the ones that just either aren't feasible or have too many barriers in front of them. And then the last third is the truly creative ideas. Now, we wish we could just jump to the last third and get to the creative, but we really have to slog our way through the obvious and through the impossible to get to those creative. Now, one reason that we want to get all those ideas out there, whether we write them down or say them out loud or put them on a whiteboard, whatever works, is that it creates more room in our brain for other ideas to enter. If our brain is already holding 5 ideas and they happen to be the obvious and impossible ones, if we just try to start thinking about more, they're still there cluttering them up. If we get them out, if we get them out of our brain, we create room in our brain for generating more ideas. And there's a lot of value in that. Now, as we start to do that, as we start to get through those ideas, we also find that sometimes there's a lot of value in even those impossible ideas. You take an impossible idea and subtract from it. You just take it back a couple of notches, and you find that there's actually some goodness in it. Maybe not the full impossible idea is the one you're going to go with, but if you trim it back just a bit, now you have something you can work with. But you never would have even examined that had you not stated that impossible idea in the first place. Also, by getting those ideas out there, we find that we can combine and steal from them. We take a portion of one idea, a portion of another idea, and we put them together to create a new idea. That becomes a lot less likely if we don't get those ideas out there in the first place. So ideation is about volume, no matter what the circumstances, whether done solo or done as part of a team. Now, a key to this is taking creativity to the process. Now, we really can't just turn on creativity. We can't just say, okay, now's the time in which we have to be creative, so we flip a switch and turn it on. However, the more we practice creativity, the more often it's going to be there when we need it. This is why, every time we have a chance to generate multiple ideas, practicing generating multiple ideas helps build that muscle, helps build the capability of creativity. Even if we didn't need it for problem A, now it's there. The creativity is there for us, and we can access it when we get to problem B. So the more we get to practice creativity, the more we build that muscle and can use it when it gets to the ideating phase. Another way to sort of tap into creativity is to ask things like, what would so-and-so do? Think about a person that you respect or an organization that might have a particular approach to doing business. How would Disney solve this? How would Chick-fil-A solve this? When you ask a specific instance like that, you might get some ideas about how you might go about solving it. You may not adopt it, but it gives you more ideas to put on the pile of ideas. Now, in the world of process improvements, there's some language that we use when we start to look at what does good look like in process, and they involve activities, connections, and flows. We start to talk about the lean rules, which they become known to be as, which is rule number 1 is structure every activity. So if we have an activity, can we add structure to it that makes it more effective? Rule number 2 is clearly connect every customer and supplier. How do we clearly connect any pairing so that it answers the question, how do we know when a handoff or a connection is trying to be made? And for flows, how do we simplify or specify every flow? How do we take the waste out of it to simplify it? How do we make it one path to specify it? So the more we follow those rules, they give us clues and guidance to the types of ideas that might help in our process improvement. Now, also as we start to think about the process of creativity, we want to invite in conflict. Now, we still need to manage conflict. We don't want conflict to get out of hand, but inviting in conflict makes ideation better. It provides an energy, it provides a tension, which forces us to think harder, to be more creative, to think past our first ideas. So even if that's done as an individual instead of a team, we can invite in conflict by having other people challenge our process. A company, Koch Industries, for many years had a process called the challenge process, which meant before you make a decision, invite conflict in, invite challenge into your decision to make you smarter and perhaps more creative about the decision you're trying to make. Once we have our ideas, we also have to select which idea we're going to go forward with. Now, there's 2 key parts to this. One is having criteria upon which we're going to make that decision, how we're going to select it. Now, some organizations have a very clear heuristic. What is the single, we're always going to choose the simplest one, or we're always going to choose the cheapest one, or we're always going to use the one that best serves the customer. So that's great if your organization has a very simple rule that everybody can follow to select ideas. If not, we might have more complex decision criteria, but it's really valuable to establish those criteria before you start the ideation process. Why? Because if you do your ideation and then establish your criteria, it's pretty obvious how the criteria might be biased by your particular favorite answer. And so it's not really an analytical process of selection then, it still is then an emotionally driven one based on our bias. So establish your criteria, whether they're set criteria before problem solving even begins, or you establish it as you're beginning ideation. Have those criteria established before you start selecting. And the most important criteria is test. That's the other part of selection, is test. Whether that's the final answer before you go to implementation, or if you have multiple competing ideas that you like all of them, can I test my way to the selection? So testing becomes an important part of that selection process. So don't race through the solution part of the process. Ideation is about volume, selection is about analytics, and we really want to approach this part of the problem-solving process, regardless of our problem-solving tool, in a deliberate and thorough way.